reason I left the red line.
Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order of LIFT. Today is May 10th, 2018, and the time is 6:30. We'll begin with the roll call. Carol Brzeziak.
Here.
Cindy Christensen.
Here.
Jason Henderson.
Yeah.
Nicholas is not able to join us tonight. Joseph Areno.
Here.
Jack Reinchecke.
Here.
And Kevin Seiler is here. I'd also like to thank Patrick Driscoll for joining us tonight.
Here.
Tiffany Wooten and Stephen Kemp.
Thank you.
Also all our neighbors who are joining us either in person or online. The next item is the minutes from the last meeting. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Is there any comments regarding, discussion regarding the minutes as presented?
No, they're doing a wonderful job. I think they're right.
Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. The next agenda is public comment. Public is welcome to come forward and address the board. We have 3 minutes, and we ask that you give us your name at the beginning. Does anybody in attendance wish to make any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item for Tiffany, which is the financial report.
Good evening. You have before you a packet with up-to-date financial information through April 30th, 2018. I don't know, in the interest of time, I could just explain what has changed since the last time because there really hasn't been much happening. If you have any particular questions, I'll be happy to answer. We did receive about $8 of property tax revenues over the last month for Columbine. And we did receive $434 of interest in Collar Trust. And then in March, the City of Littleton did actually transfer $73,896 of sales tax increment for the Columbine area as well. So essentially that is all that has changed since the last report. So if you have any particular questions, I can certainly answer those right now. The last page is probably the one that you're most interested in, page 8, that shows your actual cash balances and accounts that you have. Collar Trust and the Wells Fargo up. Total of $467,096.26 is what you have cash on hand currently. I do apologize for not having the amendment for the budget. I think Wendy sent out an email explaining there was a miscommunication on that, so we'll certainly have that at the next meeting.
Is there a motion to accept the financial report as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of accepting the financial report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Tiffany. Committee reports. We will start with the website, and I believe Cindy.
I did bring the
I'm sorry?
flash. I did bring a flash drive.
Yep, it's all set up for us.
Okay, good.
Great. See?
Oh, they said they'd come down and set that up.
Yeah, but
Oh,
to
move it
control
forward,
it,
yeah.
to move it forward, do you want to just signal me?
Yeah,
Would that work?
we can do that.
Okay, let me get my stuff. Minutes.
There's
have
not
something?
that,
You-
there's not
Hannah?
that many. I did them in black and white, and I did them on two-sided so that we could cut down as many. Cut down as many.
And would you stick with me real quick and just make sure that I know what I'm doing to control it for Cindy? Is that it, the D?
Is this the current 237?
No, this is the
Okay.
subcommittee that wants to redo the website. Current website. I don't know.
Cindy?
Yeah.
Of the files here, which one should I pull out?
It should just say Lyft website.
Okay.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Then you'll tell me when you want me to change the screen for you? Okay.
And everybody has copies.
Okay.
So when we were meeting, if you can remember, the current Lyft website basically comes up and there's some clouds, and then it says, "Welcome to Lyft." I don't know if we need a page like that, but basically this would be your first page when you open the website. So what we talked about, and I think we may have talked about at the last full board meeting, was that people don't really know what Lyft is or what they do, and why it's around, that kind of thing. So we decided to just start with the
Now she can do it.
Thank you.
You're relieved.
Okay, so when you open it up, the first thing you have is the little squares at the top will signify buttons that you could push, and you could go to those pages, similar to what we have now on the website. So the first thing is the board of directors, and we'll look at that in just a minute. And then Columbine Square Plan, which I think should say project. I just, since we just have the one plan, I just put that one in there. And then contact us is probably what we'll say. And then meetings and minutes. So the first thing you see is we do what is Lyft, and you'll have to kind of use your imagination. Remember that we're scrolling on this rather than, doing it. It's going to be in right on the website. So what is Lyft? And I just put some verbiage in here so that we can have some words come in, and it might be a little bit longer. And then, so what is Lyft? And then we can put in there if you can see that state law is in blue, so we can put hot buttons in any of these that we want, and so somebody can go to the state law, for instance, if they want to, and then what does Lyft do, and tells them what they do, and then Lyft history, and we have history that goes back quite a ways. So let me see if I can do that.
Cindy, do you want questions along the way?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Now that we're looking at this, and this is great, thank you for doing this after our meeting. This is nice to see it in black and white. One of the things that we can do with WordPress, because we had so many long paragraphs, I really like the format of the 3 topics that come up. We can put a read more, and they click on it, and it will take them to the full article. And that way they would see all 3 of these items right up on the home page at one time.
Yeah. And also that would keep everybody from having to keep scrolling and things, because I know that gets pretty irritating sometimes. Okay, so now we go to, and I just put the little buttons up there so you can see what page we're on. So when you go to the board page, it's going to look similar to what we have now. Sorry. I just put it in 2 columns because it was easier to get onto the PowerPoint. When it scrolls down the page, we can put it back into 1 column. There is one thing on here, sorry, that where it says bio line, we thought about putting a little bio, a couple sentences about each of the board members, just like, what they used to do, that kind of thing. Whatever, the board members want to put on there, and then people will get acquainted with the board members. Then project. So this is the page that's basically the intro to the plan and the area. So again, as Carol mentioned, we could put read more in here, and they could go to the full plan, or we could do some kind of it goes somewhere so that they don't have to keep scrolling. So we just put key findings on the big on this one. And then contact us, and I didn't make this real fancy, but I think what we did decide to do is there was a phone number on the current contact us that's on the current website, so we decided to take a phone number off until the board decides exactly how we're going to do the contact us. And I'm not sure that we would put a phone number on there. We might just leave it up to, people can email and they can ask questions and send whatever information that they want to send. And then the meetings and minutes page, we decided to put just like the city council has theirs. where you can, basically look at the meetings, like today's meeting is on there on the very front, and it's got the things that we have in the meeting documents for tonight, and then it just goes back from there. And then we have a lot, so another thing that we thought, and you'll see it coming up here, is the way WordPress is set up, we can have a category that basically we put the archive minutes in. So if we want to put just minutes from 2018, and people can scroll and look at that, and then we can tell them on the page, go to, and give it a hot button that they can go to where they can see more of them. And hopefully put them into this way that they're set up here. Okay, and then this is how WordPress is set up, and I just put in our little project, contact us, meetings, minutes, recent posts, recent news, categories. Categories is where we could put the archive minutes and meeting documents, I think is what we talked to at our last meeting. And I think that's the last page that we had, that we talked about it. Now we haven't rewritten anything, just kind of put in so that you can see what it looks like. It'll probably need a lot of rewrite because it's right now, if you notice, there's a lot of verbiage in it.
Sure.
And it's a little bit so that people probably don't want to read all that. And then when they're scrolling, they may not want to, well, they might want to read all that.
I'm sure you're not wrong.
But they may not want to scroll, or they may, not want to get, they may want to go right to what they want to see, and, if they use the buttons, they can do that. Or if we set up hot buttons, they can go right to where they want to, where everything is that they want to see.
I have two thoughts. Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead, Jack.
Number one, we're going to make this searchable so that if anybody that doesn't understand LIFT but understands urban redevelopment can find it. So you got to make sure that that key searchable, whatever code you have to put in there is it.
Jack, can I ask a question just to make sure I understand? Are you talking about from a Google search or a search
Google.
within the page? Okay.
Google search, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's what I've been doing. And then in the contacts, there are two kinds of contacts, in my opinion. One is the public, and the other is an architect or a developer or an engineer on behalf of a client trying to see what our requirements are for urban renewal. And even though we do not have fully fleshed out requirements that we want to give to a developer, say these are our requirements and this is what you have to do, I would make sure that we have at least that part of the button two places, or you can have another place. If you're interested in doing a project, click that one, and then they'll come up with a sign under development. But that's okay. I just make sure we got that there.
If I may, there was
There's a process.
there's a process already been adopted by previous boards. That's one of the things as we move forward, we're going to have to revisit that and see if it's still applicable or if we need to tweak it or amend it. But it's already been adopted, so we can put that up currently. I think that is probably one of the buttons on the side there we could do more information or whatever. But
It's actually one of the documents that we have.
yeah, we do have that document, and that could be an agenda item to revisit that and what it says. But I think, trying to clean some things up first, and then.
Yeah, I understand.
But we already have something in place. We could put that on there until we address if we want to make any changes to what was adopted previously.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It just occurred to me, this might be obvious, but you've got your on the contact page, you've got this form that people will be able to fill out. Mm-hmm. In theory, you could make the subject line a pull down, I am an engineer, or something like that, or I'm a citizen, or something, or I have a question, so that stuff that was related to making proposals would already automatically be sorted that way. It's a thought.
Oh, that's a good thought.
Jack, because this is kind of your field, is there anything else that you think should be on the contact page that a developer would be looking for that we should include?
Not necessarily. What they want to do is know preliminary, read it really quickly, what are our requirements?
Okay, so maybe under category, developers, interested party developers or something like that, that would take them to that information?
See, if you search other urban renewal authorities in the Front Range area, you can pull that stuff up. Denver's is just page after page, but you can get it real easily. So there's just the two things to recap. One, make sure it's searchable for an architect like me that wants to look at urban renewal, and then two, then an area where I can easily find the requirements.
Joe?
On the meetings and minutes page, first with respect to the meetings and minutes tab, I guess this is just a rough draft, so it's not worth commenting, but just like meetings and minutes so that they know that there's information about meetings, not just the minutes. And then do you anticipate posting or attempting to post future meeting dates on here and then the agenda before the meeting? And then rough draft, so forgive me if this is obvious to you, but I also would suggest some sort of a comment or an explanation of the nature of these meetings, the public nature of these meetings, the opportunity for comment. And then a final comment. First off, this is really great. I think it's really great to have everything just straightforward in one spot that's accessible and easy. And I don't think this site needs a lot of fluff, and it seems like you guys avoided some of that feeling. So that's great. I don't recall if it was a board member or a member of the public that commented when we got this packet of information from Wendy that they would like to see a lot of this. I don't know all of it or a lot of it, what would be appropriate in some sort of an archive. And I don't know if that goes into the which section that might fall into, but have we had a conversation about what agreements or historical documents might be worth having up there?
Well, I think WordPress, correct me if I'm wrong, we can set up some of these, and these would be hot buttons that would go to different things. So I don't know if that would be.
Envision something that says agenda, packets, and minutes. And they click on each to get to each.
So if you've seen the city's website,
Yes.
where they'll have the meeting there, with the date, they've got it sorted with all the different boards and commissions, but it would be just for us on our page. And then if you just go across, it has the date of the meeting. So if for some reason that meeting was canceled, we would record it there that the meeting was canceled. Then the last column, the first thing that gets populated in there is the agenda. Then once the meeting concludes, then the video gets tagged in there so they can click on that to watch it. And then the last thing is once we accept the minutes, that gets populated in there. So right there for the year, they would see very much what the city, mirror what the city is doing, but just for us. And they would be able to click it right off of our meetings page, meetings and meetings page. Then the archive would just be, once the year concludes, that would become the archive and we'd start the new calendar year.
I think that I believe it was a member of the public asking if some of these historical documents that aren't currently publicly available or easily available could be made available on the website.
Yeah, right now there's a bunch of documents on the last page that we looked at, and we're going to go through each one, and we still need to go through those and see, are these relevant? So like there was some resolutions that were accepted by the board last year and in the previous year. It's like, well, the resolutions within the minutes, why do we pull them out separately? It just gets it cluttered. But there are things let's say, a link to the urban renewal or actions the city council takes that impact the urban renewal, we would put those in there and would retain those, but we still need to go through each one of those. You know, the purpose tonight was to kind of give you an overview of how we saw it, how we were trying to simplify it and make it real navigable. Is that the right word? And you know, make sure that everybody's on the same page, that we're heading in the right direction, and then we'll continue to work on the verbiage and the documents, and then be able, you know, by the next meeting, have something, a finished thing to show you what it would look like and what we would include.
We could also, on the meeting in minutes, along with the public, there should be a paragraph in there that basically says, you know, we meet on the second Thursday of every month.
Yeah.
And we could even put, I think the city council actually has a few dates on top that, you know, so there would be a June or a date up here, you know, and so there's nothing there, but people would know that those meetings are upcoming.
I'll use it.
Yeah.
Another question on the contact sheet. There's a statement, we will respond to you within 2 business days. Who's we?
That is the $1 million question. That was part of what we wanted to discuss tonight, is direction on how we want to handle these, and who would get these and deal with these inquiries. Previously, it was the manager that the board had a few years ago that handled all these, and that's what the phone number originally was to that person, individual. Since we don't have a manager, we just have to discuss where we think that should lie. And if it has to lie in this chair here, then we can do that. I would
Promise 48 hours.
I would not promise. No, that would be amended unless somebody else wants to take this, volunteers to take it on and says that they can do it within 48 hours. But you know, we're looking for direction on what the board thinks we should go in that direction, how we should address that.
That is the problem with social media. If you do not maintain it, it doesn't work. In fact, it works against you.
Yes, Carol.
I would like to see it fall within your responsibilities, but I would also like to, as a board member, know what kind of inquiries we're getting and responses, so if the board could be copied, or if it could become part of our agenda each meeting, so that we know what's going on. Chances are there's probably not much happening, at least right now, but it could change. But I would be very comfortable with having you do
No,
that.
I'm fine with that, and that's what I would propose if we would move in that direction. That would become an agenda item where I would, if it's so chosen that I to handle it, that I would report out, okay, we got 5 emails. These were the topics of the 5, and they were addressed, and here's how they were addressed. Or if it was a question that needed to come to the full board for discussion, how do we respond to this inquiry, we would have that. I mean, there's certain things, like say, if somebody just said, where do I find some more information on urban renewal, I can respond, give them the link, and say, here's where you find more information. Or when do you meet? I can tell them when they meet. But something that may be more complex, or we need to talk about, then I would bring it forward.
You could respond back and say, hey, we received your message. This one, we're going to have to talk, or something.
Right, discuss it at our next meeting, and you're welcome to join us.
That way you do respond.
Correct.
And then I agree, it'd be a neat idea. There might be nothing in it, but every meeting you could have like a little pack in the back. These are the questions we got. Because just, let's assume that we're getting a trickle all the time. It would be interesting to see the data on like, seems like we're getting a lot of questions about the same thing or whatever.
And then maybe that's somehow we address, if it is a recurring question, maybe we address it in the website somewhere.
It can't hurt. It sounds like good data.
Okay.
That even might be one of those categories, frequently asked questions, and just if they're the kind of question you're talking about, and boom, boom, boom.
Do
Maybe if one
FAQ.
person's asked, somebody
Right.
else might be interested.
That would reduce the number of Would there need to be some kind of a notice, even if they're presented anonymously, that the questions might be presented at the board meeting or a part of the agenda, or a lot of sensitive things coming through, I guess, but I know when I would submit a question through an email versus showing up at a public meeting, I would be surprised if I saw that copied into an agenda.
I would put it, I agree with you that a line saying any questions submitted might be read in a public meeting. That's actually probably all it would need to
So
say.
some kind of maybe something even out of the Open Records Act that says that all communication is public information.
Yeah, that's-
Some kind of a little disclaimer, so everybody knows that what goes on there could become public.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Even though I'm sure that it probably is in fact a minor issue for people, I think you're right that it's a responsible thing to do.
Do you have any comments on that, Steve?
The city we use on email, we have a standard disclaimer that indicates that that generally email may be a public record. What my suggestion would be is that you may want to just consider that on the website we can provide that language, and there would just be a disclaimer that would simply say, please note that your submission is a public record under the Colorado Sunshine Act, and if they choose to submit, that they're at least aware of it, and if they choose not to, so be it.
Any further questions or comments? So we'll continue to work on fleshing this out, some of the verbiage, cleaning some of that up, and hopefully have something to present to you at the next meeting that would be motionable, we can move forward in implementing. Carol?
I have talked to Eric, and already I told him I felt real confident that we were going to use that same matrix that the city uses for the meetings. And that, to me, is the most difficult part of what it is we need to do. The rest of it's kind of rearranging and cleaning up and putting better pictures in. And I asked him if we could do all of these pages in a draft form and then present it to the group. And if the group likes it, we just hit the publish button. And he believes it's going to work out for us to do it that way. So I'll know more. If it suits, I will go ahead and follow up with him. And then Cindy, if you want to work on the language that goes in here. Do you want us to just plug in what we have now? And then, so we have something if you don't have it in
Right,
next meeting?
I can just go and plug in what we have now.
Okay.
And then if at our next subcommittee meeting, we decide we need more information, we can figure out how to get that.
Could you electronically send me this so I can send it to Eric, and then that'll help him?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy.
The next item is the community report for the Lyft attorney.
I can discuss the work we're doing in the RFP. After looking at a number of RFPs, actually, I went to the city and found the template that they use. Now, I've used that template, but I had a couple of questions as to whether we should, how much of it should retain, because it's not completely clear to me if this is an RFP coming from the city or if it's an RFP coming from the Lyft board. Setting that question aside really quickly, you'll notice that I've left all the red lines in, meaning all the corrections, so that you can see specifically what I've changed. A lot of this is boilerplate, but I wanted to show you the email addresses where who people would be contacting. I think would be this committee, Joseph and myself. On page 2 of 11. I have created some preliminary dates for issuing the proposal, getting back questions initially from people who receive it, and then the deadline, and then the award of the so-called contract. And this anticipates issuing the proposal a little over a month from now, and then having an attorney chosen on September 1. And you'll notice there are these increments of, there's a month to get questions back, and then 2 weeks after that for people to put in the proposal, and then a month later we issue the contract. That might seem fairly luxurious, but that was what I got with me now.
What way, Jason?
Luxurious in that it might seem like a lot of time, but these are like 2 week and 3 week increments, so it'll move pretty quickly.
But not too quickly for someone that would be.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, and that's why you have really from the issuance to the deadline for submitting the proposal is 6 weeks. So, which is, I think, good. I want to find some more of the particulars. I want to get to the particulars of the meat of the RFP, and then I'll go back to this form question of what we should do with references to the city. So page 7, this is really the meat of the proposal, and most of this came from a really excellent memo that Joe did. In the beginning, we set up this background saying that we are looking for qualified firms to provide legal services. And we go into sort of the background that we do not anticipate. First of all, the wonderful relationship that we enjoy with the city attorney continues. We do not anticipate needing an attorney to attend every meeting. And I wanted to say this up front because you want to get people in the mind of what kind of scope we're talking about. Specifically that we want attorneys who meet these mandatory requirements, familiarity with laws that apply to the LIFT board, municipal, and so forth. And then the scope would be that when requested, they might attend a meeting. They would answer questions and offer advice when requested. They would provide answers, advice in memo form when requested, and they could provide answers in person as requested. And so, in theory, they would come back to us with a proposal that would say how they would price that out. Mostly by an hourly fee or what have you. Now, here is my question, and you might know, all these references to the city, do they remain?
No, they should be changed. They should be changed to LIFT. Urban renewal authorities are separate political subdivision from the city.
Okay.
So we would actually change those either to LIFT or to the authority because it's a separate political subdivision.
Okay, so I'll continue, if you don't mind, to use the format.
Oh, the format's fine.
I think it's fabulous. Can we continue to use the Littleton Center as the mailing address?
Yes. No, the city has long had that kind of relationship, and I would anticipate as long as the authority's in place, it will continue to have that kind of relationship.
Fabulous. Okay, so the next thing that I would do is we'll go back and clean this up. Get rid of the context, fix up all the context stuff, make a clean version, and then come to our next meeting. And I think the right order of business would be to come to the next meeting, get it approved, and then issue it out. And I also will have to come back with a proposal on, we're going to have to figure out exactly how one issues the RFP, that's something I don't know. So that'll be something else we need to figure out.
A couple things that I see.
You can, but I think it should come to the Bar Association.
Well, I'm on page 8, and statement of qualifications. Do we want to have specified that that there are minimum qualifications within this? Or just leave it wide open to somebody who passed the bar yesterday, wants to do urban renewal and submits a proposal. I mean, I think we want to put some qualifier in it that the individual firm should have X amount of years.
Well, that's possible. We've already made it so that we left it vague. It's mandatory that they must demonstrate familiarity, but we didn't qualify that. Of course, as we go through the proposals, I'm anticipating putting together a spreadsheet and ranking things, and people who don't necessarily meet the requirements, as well as others, would just fall off the list, honestly. But it's possible. I'm not arguing with the point.
I just, again, it's just one of the things. I mean, I just finished scoring and reviewing 25 architectural proposals for the Auraria
So
campus.
how did you do that?
So we actually had a matrix set up with a scoring.
Yeah.
So they would say what they would have to give their resume of the different architects that were involved with, that were going to be part of this on-call process. And then, you score them how you feel the committee that's reviewing this would score them on these different areas. How familiar they are with the project, how close they are to the campus, that's part of it. Then the next phase of it is, the people who are scoring this is compiled, and then out of those 25, I think we'll distill about 7 to 10 that we actually bring in for an interview. And then, figure from that, score, kind of either score it or by consensus say we like, because we established about a panel, a list of 7 to 10 architects. Right. And we'll say, okay, these are the 7 we're going to use over the next year. And that fulfills the requirements for the state architect office. So that's usually when we're doing these type of professional services that we do, and in pricing, pricing becomes secondary.
Right. I think.
So that leads to, I'm not seeing in this process how we're going to qualify them or rank these individuals or score these different firms. Yeah. And then, is there going to be, or should there be, I mean, I believe there should be, but, again, it's the whole board to decide, should there be a session where they come in front of the board and we, as a group, talk to them and then decide who we're going to choose?
So I have several thoughts about that. First of all, yes, I totally agree about the matrix, and we were anticipating that in that it's invisibly between that last month after we received the proposals and award the contract. But we could absolutely come back with a more detailed plan on all that. But yes, you create a matrix because they're going to hand in these proposals, and then you draw out the information and enter into a spreadsheet form.
And I would also recommend that you put a page limit on this.
Yeah, okay.
Because if you don't, you will get novels.
Okay.
Trust me,
that's a good point.
Been there, done that.
I have a question.
Yes.
So how many law firms do you think would respond to this?
I actually don't know. It's a good question.
I don't think it'll be very many.
It may not be, I don't know either, and it may be, this discussion may be moot if we get one respondent. But if we get 5 or 6, even if we get 3 or 4, how do we rank those 3 or 4? Do they all come in and pitch their services to the full board?
Well, that's it. Actually, well, first of all, as to the first question, I think when we create the spreadsheet, we use columns like years, years of experience or number of projects or something like that. From the simple like demonstrates familiarity, yes, no, to how many years, whatever, and then start to rank them that way. But actually, your idea of having if we had enough finalists to come in and answer questions, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have them come in and address the board. I think that's not a bad idea. We could build into the schedule that whichever board meeting is happening around then, an agenda item could be inviting in this candidate's attorney.
So the question I have for Steve then is that does that, if the interviews for a firm, any firm that we're talking to, does that become a official board item or a study session?
Normally, you would do that in a study session, and in most jurisdictions, you might even do that in an executive session, a closed executive session, where you would do the interviews.
Sure.
Jason and Joseph, how do you feel about making a minimum 2 years requirement of practicing law in the state of Colorado?
I would probably look for more, even.
More than 2?
Yeah.
How many?
I was thinking 7 to 10,
Wow, okay.
if they're going to be handling this on their own.
All right. Can we include that?
For the lead attorneys, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say something like the individuals or firms should have a minimum of 7 years experience in this area.
Right.
That sounds
Right.
great.
There may be an associate with less, but
Right.
assisting on various projects.
And I think you'd want to ask for, references, what urban renewal projects they've been involved with. Maybe give a synopsis of what was involved with that project. Again, that's what, I'm kind of mirroring what I've been doing with architectural firms. Where they tell us, what projects have you done on higher ed? And they show us, gives us a little synopsis of what they've done and the scope of the work and how many square feet and the budget costs and so forth. I'm not sure we need to get into budget costs, but how complex did a project get for them? If they've done one project, it was very simple.
Yeah.
No, versus a firm that said, oh, well, we stepped in a landmine here.
Yeah.
Maybe we want to talk to them a little bit more. I'm just saying, so we have a sense of.
I like these questions, yeah. So, yeah. So I'm wondering, we do the edits, we won't necessarily have, let's see, we can even circulate the proposed RFP, since our emails are open records anyway, we could circulate the RFP by email as it gets revised among the board and kind of get people's assent to that, do you think?
I don't have a problem. Carol?
I would
My only
like that.
concern with that is that board members just would need to individually comment to the committee. I don't want the board commenting as a reply to all whatever, because now you're holding a serial meeting. So as long as individual board members reply individually to the committee, then I would be fine with that.
So we can comment to one of you, and then the 2 of you get together and figure things out.
Or to the 2 of us, since we're the committee, I suppose, yeah.
We'll BCC the whole board, so there's no risk of, so if you reply all, it would just come.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So if I'm sending something to just the 2 of them, that would be 3 of
That would be permissible. That's not a meeting, you're sending it to the subcommittee, and you're doing it as an individual board member. My concern is if you do a reply to all, and all 7 of you are doing it to the committee, now I have an issue.
Right, okay.
Under the statement of qualifications, because this is a boilerplate, maybe F, qualifications of subcontractors, can we eliminate that?
What page are we on? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, page 8. I wouldn't think that we would be interested in a subcontractor.
If it's an individual, they may want to reference somebody that would assist them. I'm just thinking.
I know that some firms, just the way that they're set up, might be a partner level, and then they have an associate who's actually working in the firm, but as a contractor with their, just the way that some of these firms are structured, we can leave it in there.
Yeah, and it would identify that relationship, and we would know that up front, and not know all of a sudden they're bringing in Joe Schmo from ABC firm. It's like, wait a minute, we don't have anything, we don't know about this relationship.
I've got a couple other points that I want to ask about. I would suggest that we get a mailbox here at the city center for Lyft. I think there has been one in the past. And then we have a place for these to go to.
Or do we-
that you can access.
Do we have, Steve, you were saying that there's been a relationship in the past where we receive
Yes.
communication. Is there some means of filtering it out? I guess there is. I mean, how does it exist? Do we have a mailbox?
That I'd have to check. I'm almost certain that you probably do in the mailroom. And if not, I'm sure we could arrange for all these to be put in a segregated mailbox. That would be the NIF board's mailbox, so it would not be mixed in.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we definitely need one.
Probably, I think
I really think there is one.
Steve was saying there probably already is, so that's something to investigate.
I'm certain we can arrange for that.
And the culling process, that let's envision that you get a dozen
Yep.
people to respond, which actually, don't let me forget about something you had said at the very beginning of this discussion at a previous meeting.
Okay.
Then you guys go through, do your matrix, and you come up with a final list. And then we have a study session or a regular meeting, a special meeting where we interview the three. And if we do it as something other than a study session, then we can actually discuss and make a selection that night if that's what we are comfortable with doing. But I would rather schedule something that's not our regular meeting in order to accommodate the schedule.
Yeah.
Instead of pushing it out, because we're not talking about a lot of time.
No.
I think you're right. I think we can set up an executive session within this.
Yeah.
In this, you know, you're going to get them back on, what's your timeline?
What did I say? I can't remember. If people would give us questions by July 15th, if any, and then in theory, if people are sending them in, then we cap it on August 1. Whatever we have on August 1 is that we start ranking.
But it give you a couple weeks to go through them, score them. The executive session could be scheduled right now for the middle of August. And then it's ready for us. I mean, the only delay would be, then at the September, the meeting in September, after the recommendation comes out, from the executive session, study session, we would then adopt it, that we have a motion to enter into a contract with XYZ firm and to be awarded. And that would be done at the September meeting.
Yeah, so
But that wouldn't really screw up our timeline. I mean, is that what you could even push out? Give you 3 weeks. I mean, we meet end of August, because we don't meet till the second week of September, and then we've got time to deal with
an
it.
executive session in late August, sort of to go over the finalists. Again, assuming a universe where there's like 3 or 4 finalists.
Correct.
Then we'd have an executive session scheduled sometime in late August. I think that's a good idea.
I have heard executive session and study session. I tend to favor executive because I think people will speak more freely and easily in that context, but is there any differently that a study session would be?
Can we clarify a little bit? I would prefer that we do the interviews in the public, and then we can deliberate in exec. And in order to be able to convene to an executive session, we need to be in a special meeting or a regular meeting. We cannot go into exec from a study session. So I'm thinking about when the city, I've sat in on a couple of rounds of interviewing with attorneys. And as a member of the public, I really appreciated knowing what kinds of questions the council was interested in getting responses, and it was interesting and informative to hear what the responses. And so when the attorneys are hired, you kind of have a familiarity with them already. That as a member of the public, I appreciate it.
Sure.
But Joseph, I want to go back to when we first started talking about this. You had talked about the idea of going beyond the firms that deal with urban renewal, because there's really only 5 or 6 in the city that deal with urban renewal. You were talking about attorneys that have maybe eminent domain experience or land use experience where they can take their skills and apply it to urban renewal.
Yes.
And then I'm hearing something about urban renewal firms. Are we still looking at a broad?
No, we are, and the way that I try to describe this is just that they have to demonstrate familiarity with the applicable laws and regulations and issues and so forth. But that might mean that they're a firm that is is not at all focused in that arena. They might be construction or something, you know, but it just depends on what kind of proficiency they can demonstrate.
Would you consider that on your little matrix as a deficit if they don't have urban renewal experience?
That's a good question. I have not, we haven't.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of want to cast a wide net so that when we're narrowing it down, something that I think that Steve said that stuck out to me was just seeing where we are as a board and what a lot of the questions that we're asking. And I think he said that a lot of understanding of municipal law and just those basic questions of governance are going to be the things that are coming up right now in the project, if and when we get one. That's almost secondary to our most immediate needs. So I don't know the answer to your question as to whether that would be a positive or a negative right now, but I do know that we're casting a wide net so that we get them all on the table. But I tend to think that most of the attorneys that would be qualified, either because they're involved in construction or financing or municipal law, would, as long as they have a cursory understanding of urban renewal law, would probably be able to wrap their minds around it pretty effectively as time went on.
So what I see on here, do you plan on posting this someplace?
I don't recall what the answer to that is.
Something about an E something or another.
Yeah.
What about?
Yeah, if I can maybe just comment on that. The city uses Rocky Mountain e-purchasing as a form of soliciting for RFPs and bids, and I don't know that would be a good place for you to advertise.
So I'd have to clean that up.
Yeah, I'm making some comments too for you though. Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, Steve.
My suggestion would be that you would do this kind of request for proposals, or at least a cover page of it, in the Colorado Bar Association Journal. That is where you're likely to have the most firms see it. And my guess is that you may even get proposals and something like this is fairly common to do a supplemental request where you may decide, okay, we have 6 proposals. We want to do a questionnaire or something to sort through them without even doing interviews, because you may want to then just, it's very common in a situation like this. I've done it numerous times where there'll be a detailed questionnaire that may lead to you picking 3 firms to interview. But you don't know that at this point in time. What you can really do is draft a proposal.
Yeah.
And then decide that when you get the proposals in. You may only get one.
Right, indeed, yeah.
Problem solved.
Or specifically, we may get one that are plainly not helpful, so. Okay.
I have 2 questions. One's a clarification. On page, find it here, yeah, page 6 of 11, qualifications and compensated vendors, it says current maximum bonding capabilities. Does that get to O&E insurance?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because I'm not familiar with law firms have to have O&E.
It's a professional and liability insurance. We require a minimum of $2
Because to
million.
me, bonding is something else. But. Okay, number 2. I see on our last page of our bag register that we got in the report that we've paid Hoffman, Parker, Wilson, Carberry for legal services over the last year. For some reason, we shouldn't be continuing to use them rather than go through this procedure.
I believe that's a question for the board.
I know.
I don't know the answer to
That's
that.
why I just put it out to the board.
Well, in theory,
Well,
it's to them as well. I mean,
I know, but apparently we already have a contract with them. We've been paying them.
I think the city had a contract with them, and they attended our meetings like Steve does, but because it was a contractual thing, we had to pay for the services.
Okay.
Steve is now an employee of the city, so he's here as part of his duties.
It's part of my duties.
congratulations.
Other duties that as a sign.
This firm was not hired on the basis of doing this kind of work.
No,
On the
my
kind of work
understanding they were
we're
hired
seeking.
is in the interim, we didn't have, the city did not have an attorney. Yes, Carol?
Corey has been the attorney for Lyft from almost the very beginning, once it was revived in 2014, I think it was. But he was also on retainer with the city for all things urban renewal. So we had an attorney that was representing both parties. And for me, that did become a conflict. It was a problem. And at the end, Corey was wanting to bow out.
Okay.
Oh,
And just so it's understood by the board, that won't be the case in the future if there were a project, and that's a big if, but if there were a project, the city, either myself or someone that I would select would represent the city on that project. And frankly, the Urban Renewal Council would have to be someone who has a significant amount of experience in what we call conduit financing, because that's the primary purpose of this board, and that's not an area that I do.
The federal ID and the state tax exempt numbers that are on page 3, I know that Lyft has a federal ID. I'm not sure about a state tax exempt number. What difference do you have?
I honestly don't know where I'll check into the state exempt number. But yes, that is a comment that I was going to leave.
Okay, and you know what the federal, okay, good.
So, Jack brought up an interesting, when he brought up the insurance part of it, I would assume when the city's purchasing sends this out, they send out an addendum with this, or an attachment that says, these are our limits and such. Since this is going to be a Lyft request and not a city request, do we want to have language, either our own addendum spelling out what the requirements are, if we want to mirror the city? I don't think, if we're sending this out, we can't reference a city. I don't think we should be referencing a city requirement. I think we have to decide.
If it's not our requirement, right.
Right, we have to decide if that's what we want as a requirement, and then just take that language and just convert it ours. I mean,
Normally, in something like this, which is a professional service, after we made a selection, we would actually do a professional services agreement with the firm, which would have that kind of language in it. It would have, these are the insurance requirements, these are, this is the term of the agreement, and something like legal services, we would have provisions in for how billings are going to be handled. Are they going to be electronic? Are they going to be hard copy? What information are they going to contain? And we would do all of that as part of a professional services agreement that would occur after you've selected a particular firm.
I mean, I'm just used to when I've done this, that is part of the package we send out as a sample of what you're going to enter, the contract you're going to enter into. So that's why I'm questioning, do we want to take the city's contract, you know, say draft, take out everything that's referenced the city, and we reference Littleton or Lyft? I mean, we don't have to. I'm just saying, you know, that's a good kind of a practice that I've come to. So people know what they're going to get into.
I haven't done that one. I mean, I've done RFPs, but I've never like sent a sample contract. I'm not against it. It's a new thought. I don't see why it'd be too difficult if we had a template.
We certainly have a standard professional services agreement form, which you could certainly just reference in the request for proposals as the successful contractor will be required to enter into a professional services agreement in substantial conformity with the attached form. Now, we customize that, but we can certainly work with you on that.
And Jason, page 2 has a note that says a sample agreement is attached. So.
Great. Okay. Good.
Okay.
So that's great. Okay. Love it. That's great.
And the purpose of 6 copies, is that?
So that we just have extras to hand to you guys. So we don't have to Xerox them.
See this?
And then Xerox.
So we don't have to, okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
I have one. Somewhere in here it mentions local vendors will be preferred.
Yes.
Is there a way to, I mean, what does a local mean? I mean, there might be another thing to put that, or like,
I was thinking it meant the city of Littleton,
Well,
but it
yeah.
is left to interpretation.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily want to tie it down that much because we're going to be ranking these things ourselves anyway.
That's
So
true.
it could mean, kind of, we have discretion as to what it means. But it's a good question. It is.
I mean, it would be like
You
state
could
of
take it out
Colorado.
if you want.
Yeah, we might just take that out.
Is it going to be?
They're all licensed in Colorado.
True enough,
You're
yeah.
not-
Yeah, that's true.
I would certainly recommend you take that out. I mean, realistically, the firms that do this kind of work do it all over the state. You might well end up with a firm that maybe is in Colorado Springs, that does work all over the state. This is not,
It's not local.
not a firm that
Yeah.
will be local to one city.
Okay, that's nice. That's excellent. Thank you, Cindy.
So then you'll be working,
Scrubbing,
subbing this up, and then hope to
adding
have
more
something
stuff.
for us to move forward with on the next meeting.
Yeah, so we'll have that, this might get sent to you before next meeting.
Right.
And then at the next meeting, we'll have a final proposal along with proposed procedure for the whole selection process.
Good. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your work on this. The next item is any unfinished business? Okay. New business, the only thing I have is that you've probably all received this invitation for the barbecue honoring the boards and commissions. It happens to be the same night that we meet.
Oh, no kidding.
So, do we want to,
Meet at the barbecue?
no, I wouldn't say that. Do we want to change the time, or can we do that? Change the time a half an hour or so, or whatever, so that we can attend this? Is there much interest of the board attending this?
There's absolutely interest in attending because I think it's really important to meet the other boards and make yourself known. It hadn't occurred to me that it was the same day as the meeting. So I would like to change the time of the meeting. That just my personal preference. So what should we do? Should it be a different day or a different time?
Are you suggesting, I mean, it's 4:30 for those of you that are at work, is that an impossible time?
What time does,
5:30.
I'm sorry?
no, it starts at 5:30.
It starts at 5:30.
Doesn't give us a lot of time
Right.
to meet.
Maybe if we stand up while we're meeting, I'll go by real fast.
Now, this is the meeting that we're going to be reviewing.
Yeah.
Your work.
Yes, that's true.
Well, yeah, I hope it would be almost a final product by the time we receive all of your comments.
So we should be.
So it should be.
Wouldn't it be better to move the day?
We would have to check with availability with Wendy.
It's obvious the city council doesn't want us to attend.
Putting that, I haven't checked my mailbox.
Thanks for that.
I'm just putting it down, so I haven't.
We get the hint.
Not at all, that's not true.
But because we have more, we know we have a hot topic we've got to dispatch with, wouldn't it be better to change the date?
Yeah.
But if we've never done this before, since we're all looking at each other, and the
Let's
best,
do this this all the time. What my suggestion would be, if the chair is agreeable, the chair could contact Wendy and look at, just simply change it to a different Thursday of the month, and then you'd go back to your regular cycle the following month.
Yeah, and then the notice is the proper notification goes out. So I'll see if I can move it to the following Thursday.
14th?
The
No, that-
21st?
The 21st is not going to be able to do that.
What about the week before, the
The
7th?
7th I can do.
All right, I will see if I can move it to the
Does that
7th.
crunch you guys too much? Or do you
I have a
have-
son due on the 9th, so there's a
Well, it's the 9th, I mean.
we should be okay. We're honestly expecting it to be early, so. So it's probably okay in the 7th, but there will be a risk that I wouldn't be.
Bring the wife in case you.
I can cover for you if that happens. So, no, I'm available on the 7th as well.
Check mine.
Cindy, does that work for you?
Yeah, that works.
Probably double check my schedule before I. So I will see if I can move that to the 7th. If that does not work,
If we needed to go to the 21st, if we could meet a little earlier, I would need to be out of here by 6:30 to get where I need to be.
any earlier is going to be problematic for me.
Oh, you know what? I take it back. We changed from the 21st, so the 21st I could actually do.
21st. So
Yeah.
we'll shoot for the 21st, and the 7th will be the backup if the
Okay.
21st is not available. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Any other new business?
I was on the website and we have our minutes, but all of our minutes still say draft across the, so once they get approved, I guess what I'm saying is nobody's going back in and, we need to take ownership of that and get things done. So all of our minutes still show that they're draft. We do not have our minutes showing up on the city's website. We're not getting our meetings posted on the city's website. So I'm not sure what we need to do to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do by our resolution. But
Okay, I will follow up with Wendy on that
Okay.
and find out what we need to do to clean
okay,
that
all
up.
right. And then if Wendy has, since you've got the electronic
Oh,
file for one, and I've got electronic files, if she can't get the draft off of the minutes, and then.
So you're
we gotta
saying,
go back and correct them.
are you saying them in Word, in a draft, in the Word, or are you saying them in a PDF?
I think I sent her in Word,
Okay.
but I've had to send some in PDF because she couldn't open them. So we've had a little.
Then
but
maybe
the
a
other-
follow-up we have, okay, I'll talk to her and see what we need to do to get that.
And the other thing we need to do is go back and make the corrections. Because if they're still in draft form, then any corrections that have been
Correct.
made, they haven't been made.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
So she,
Have you done those corrections on your,
no, because, no,
okay.
I haven't, but I can certainly do it, but I don't want to mess Wendy up, so.
No, let me talk to her
If she has
about
some
that.
instructions for me, then great.
Okay. Any other new business? Okay, we've come to the second opportunity for public comment. And if anybody wishes to step forward and make any comments, we ask that you state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Oh, okay. Seeing that there's no public comment, do I have a motion for adjournment? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everybody, for your time.